Happy Halloween. Sorry to make you wait. Well, maybe not so much. Good afternoon. I do have something I'm going to ask you to bear with me as I read it. Just an update. Just literally within the last half an hour, the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, Jess Wright, signed a memo, a change memo to pre-deployment, deployment, and post-deployment procedures and protocols for DoD personnel. This is reflecting the decision that the Secretary made, as you tracked yesterday, to support the Joint Chiefs recommendation that our troops returning would go through this controlled monitoring process for about 21 days. But it also includes some guidance on civilian personnel, and I know some of you had asked about that. So if you'll just bear with me, I'll read to you the section that regards DoD civilian personnel. So civilian employees who are deploying in response to the Ebola outbreak in Western Africa have two options upon redeployment. They must choose between these options prior to departure from theater. Option 1, active monitoring and return to normal activities. Under this option, DoD civilian employees will comply with guidance from the CDC, state, and local public health authorities unless otherwise directed. This includes returning to normal work duties, routines, and life activities consistent with that guidance. DoD components will comply with active monitoring guidance in this memorandum to include twice daily temperature checks. Or option 2, to voluntarily participate in military-controlled monitoring. Under this option, DoD components will allow civilian employees to voluntarily participate in the same controlled procedures that military personnel will be undergoing established inside this directive earlier in the document. For all personnel, during the 21-day post-deployment active monitoring period, there will be no leave or temporary duty or temporary additional duty that will be authorized outside the local area to ensure continued face-to-face monitoring, except for civilian personnel participating voluntarily in the military-controlled monitoring program. And in that case, there's the question of temporary orders is kind of moot at that point because they're going to be in controlled monitoring. So I wanted to provide that guidance to you because some of you had asked about civilians and how they would factor into the protocols. And so with that, Bob?
I had a couple questions for you, but just for clarity's sake, on your first point about the two choices. The first choice essentially is to go along with the state or the CDC guidelines, period.
Correct.
Okay.
Which would be active monitoring, but they're able to go home. They just have to take their temperature twice a day.
In whatever state they live in?
Right. They just go just go home. And the only caveat to that is that they're not going to be, if they choose that option, they won't be allowed to take out-of-area leave or out-of-area temporary orders during that 21 days. They got to stay home. Okay. Not in the house, but they got to stay in the area. Does that make sense?
Okay. So my two questions are, one is, could you elaborate on or explain a little bit further the point that General Dempsey made yesterday about him saying the Pentagon is planning or considering how to expand the train and assist mission in Iraq to Anbar province? And the second question is, are you aware of or do you have any comment on discussions among a number of Arab countries, including Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and I think UAE, to form their own military alliance?
Well, let me take the second one first. I mean, these are all nations, as you know, Bob, that we have been talking to as part of coalition efforts. And those discussions, and in some cases, the very, very active participation continues. As for discussions that those nations may be having amongst themselves, I'd refer you to those governments. I'm not privy to that. We're not privy to that, and wouldn't speak to it. On your second question, I'm almost really loath to try to add anything to what the chairman said. I thought he was quite clear that we have 12 advising teams right now, 7 in Baghdad, 5 up in Erbil. They continue to work at the brigade and division level. We've long said that the Advise Assist mission is a core part of this effort to make Iraqi security forces more competent and capable in the field. And it's certainly a possibility that those advisors or perhaps even additional advising teams could advise brigade or division level headquarters that are operating in Anbar. There's no plans for that right now, but I think the chairman was referring to the potential for that should the need be there. But he also said that it's important that the Iraqi security forces continue to reach out to the Sunni tribes on their own and to bring them into the fold. And the more inclusive that they prove to be, the more competent and capable they will be as well as a team in Anbar. So I think it's an option that remains on the table, but we're not there yet.
And is there any plan, aside from Anbar, is there any plan to increase the number of teams that are in Iraq?
There's no plans right now that I foresee. I certainly have nothing to announce with respect to that. There's 12 total right now.
Thank you.
Justin.
So what's stopping you from sending them to Anbar? You said if there's a need, you'll do it. Well, isn't there a need? The 80% is in ISIS control.
Justin, I think if we believed there was a significant need for that and the Iraqi security forces or the Iraqi government felt that that need was acute and asked for it, we would certainly consider it. But I think the chairman, again, was pretty clear. This is an option that remains on the table. We're just not there yet. And we have 12 teams. Again, they're working at brigade and division level. And I want to stress that, you know, when he talked about Anbar, I think some people misconstrued that to mean that, you know, we'd have, you know, advisors down at a very low tactical level out in the field in Anbar. That is not what he's referring to, and that's not what we're referring to. It would not change the character of the advise and assist mission. It might change some of the geography, but not the character. The same level of advising would be done.
Yeah. Just to follow up on that, CNN is reporting that there's at least planning or discussions going on for the possibility of deployment of advisors should that be needed to Anbar. And I'm curious, I guess the question is, just because of the planning taking place, is that an acknowledgement that, or a fear that if U.S. advisors were not deployed there, that Iraqi security forces will not be able to handle the job of pushing back ISIS forces out of Anbar?
No, not at all. We plan for any number of contingency here. That doesn't mean that the contingency is going to happen, and it doesn't mean that it conveys any lack of clarity or a lack of confidence on our part. I mean, our job is to try to think ahead. We're always doing that. Again, we're not there yet. It remains an option that we certainly could consider, but there's no need for it right now. David?
Another thing the chairman said yesterday was that the sites for training the Syrian opposition have been chosen. How many sites and where?
I know there are several sites. You know, the Turks have agreed to host train and equip there, and the Saudis have agreed to host train and equip missions there. I don't have the exact sites for you. I can take that for the record and perhaps get back to you on that, but there are several that are in play. As the chairman also said, countries are starting to come forward with the potential to contribute trainers to this, in addition to the trainers that will contribute to it, but the vetting process hasn't begun yet.
I believe General Allen said 3 countries had agreed to host training.
Okay.
Saudi Arabia, Turkey.
Saudi Arabia and Turkey are the 2 that I'm aware of. I'll have to get back to you if there's a 3rd.
What does that do to your estimates of output, of the number of opposition fighters that you could put out in a year?
Well, it could certainly increase the level of output. The more training sites that you have, certainly the more potentially, assuming that you can get to there through a vetting program, you could potentially increase the throughput of trainees. There's no question about that. Right now, we're still working at, because it hasn't even started yet, we're still working at an estimate of about 5,400 a year. But again, that could change, and we said that from the very beginning. If we get more sites and the regimen becomes efficient enough, we certainly would hope to increase that. But that's the going in starting figure right now.
Is there an estimated start date for vetting?
No, I don't have an estimated start date on the vetting process. It hasn't begun yet. Joe?
Admiral Kirby, could you confirm local reports in Syria that Assad forces have gained grounds mainly in the north part of Syria, Aleppo, and the eastern part of the country? Are you aware of that?
I've seen the reports, Joe. I can't speak for the Syrian government and what they've done or haven't done. Joe, you got to remember, we've talked about this before. Our role inside Syria is to deny sanctuary and safe haven to ISIL, and the missions that we are flying there are in support of that mission. We are not flying missions in Syria to monitor the daily progress of Assad's forces. Let's take this back to a larger issue. The Assad regime still needs to go. The Assad regime is still a big reason why ISIL has the sanctuary and safe haven that they've been enjoying inside Syria. What we're trying to do is deny them that. That's what we're focused on.
Admiral, yesterday the Secretary talked about how he owes the President and the National Security Council his best thinking on strategy generally and Syria specifically. Has he and the Department received any response or satisfaction in answer to his concerns about the outlook for Syria and specifically dealing with the Assad regime there?
I don't think I'm going to go beyond what the Secretary said, Phil. The issue inside Syria is a key component of this larger regional approach and the strategy that we're executing. The strategy is working. We believe in the strategy. But the robust discussion that goes on inside the national security team continues to this day. I mean, every day this is a topic of discussion. And the Secretary, as he said yesterday, believes that it's his job as Defense Secretary to add to that discussion in a very candid, forthright way, and he does that. The Chairman does that. Everybody on the interagency team does that. So I think the Secretary's satisfied that that his voice is being heard and that discussion is ongoing.
The issue inside Washington seems to be this discussion is not getting resolved. There's senior defense official and news report after news report saying the White House is micromanaging us, we can't do this right, we don't know what the outlook for the strategy is. When is this going to be resolved, or will it take the President himself to step in and resolve it?
Well, the question presupposes that there's something to be resolved. I mean, I can't speak for the anonymous sources in these stories and the complaints that they might be proffering. From our perch, the strategy's working. It's the right strategy. It's going to take some time, and we've talked about that before. This is a long struggle. You can't judge the complete success of the campaign after just 3 months. It's going to take some time. But we all believe that the strategy is the right one, and the execution of the strategy is going as it should. It doesn't mean it won't be adjusted over time or metered here and there. I mean, you constantly make new decisions as you go through that, but it doesn't default the whole strategy. So, I mean, I think I'd push back a little bit on the implication in the question that there's something larger in the strategy that needs to be fixed, and I don't believe that we believe that's the case.
Well, from what I read in the New York Times, there is an outstanding question about the Syrian units that you just talked about that will be fighting there in the next couple of years, and what kind of support the U.S. will provide them when they come into contact with Assad's government forces. Has that question been answered, or is that one of these things that's still under discussion?
I think we're constantly talking about all aspects of this. And the Secretary got asked this question in the Senate hearing about the degree to which we would or we wouldn't protect opposition members that we trained if they came under attack, and he said we would come to their assistance. And I've said that here too. So but again, every aspect of a strategy, as you go through it day to day, you always re-examine, you always assess, you reassess, and you make new decisions based on progress you're making or progress you're not making. It doesn't mean the strategy itself isn't sound. Court.
I have an Ebola question. So before this 15-day plan has been presented, I guess, to the Secretary, or is clear, there's several groups, small groups, that are supposed to be coming back. Where will they be going? Is there some sort of an intermediate base, or at this point is everyone who's redeploying, U.S. military that is redeploying from West Africa, will they all go back to Vincenza, since that's been the place, even if that's not their home base?
I don't know the answer to that, actually. General Rodriguez is looking at that exact issue right now. And I don't know when the next transit of individuals is. I don't think it's imminent, probably within the next week or so, so we have some time to figure this out. But I think General Rodriguez is working on that right now. Yeah, Julie.
What's the thinking of having different rules for DoD civilians versus military personnel? Is it based on the length of time they may be there? Is it based on the duties they may perform while they're there? What's the thinking that they should have a different set of rules?
There's two components to this, Julian. One is because they're civilian employees and not uniformed service members, we legally can't force them to undergo a controlled monitoring regimen the way that we can with uniformed troops. And number two, quite frankly, they are going to be down there in just far fewer numbers. There's a math component to this. As the chairman said yesterday, that we are U.S. military members of the largest cohort going down there in big numbers, and we go in units, and we come back in units, principally. And so there's a component here of just simple size. Right now, there's about 55 DoD civilians down in West Africa between Senegal and Liberia total, compared to, well over, I think we're up at like 1,200 in terms of U.S. uniformed personnel. So big difference in the population size.
So do you, just as a quick follow-up, is there any exception for uniformed military members who might have, might be just doing a short, quick trip as part of a distinguished visitor tour, or a quick support, as opposed to someone who's going to be there for several months as part of a deployment? This
memo covers that. For somebody who's in transient personnel like that, they would not have to go through 21 days of control monitoring if it's, if we believe there was no risk of exposure. Obviously, if you're down there for a short period of time and you, for some reason, come in contact and we think there's a high risk of exposure, obviously that changes the game altogether. But if it's a transient issue, like an air crew, and they don't ever come into contact and they're only down there for a little while, they don't have to go through the full controlled monitoring process. That's all laid out in the Secretary's memo, which we will, of course, make available to you after the briefing. Carla.
Thank you. Can I switch to Russia? Yesterday, NATO said 24 aircraft, Russian aircraft, were intercepted and tracked within the last 48 hours. The NATO Secretary General has said that while NATO is not back on a Cold War footing, that the Russian activity has undermined the trust. Does the U.S. military also feel that Russia's activities have undermined trust toward them, and what steps are we going to be prepared to take in response to flights on European soil? I mean, European airspace.
Well, we certainly don't see these increased flights and activity as helpful to the security situation in Europe. Clearly, they pose a potential risk of escalation. They also, quite frankly, could pose just a potential risk to civil aviation, just in the sheer number and size and scope of these flights. So they're not exactly helpful. But what also is not helpful is Russia's continued interference inside Ukraine. So putting these flights aside, this is an opportunity for Russia to try to do the right thing and meet its international obligations, respect the territorial integrity of its neighbors. But we're watching these flights very, very closely. I can tell you that there was there were more flights today. NATO tracked flights out over the Baltics, the North Sea, and the Atlantic Ocean. The aircraft involved fighter jets, long-range bombers, and tanker aircraft. So there was another round as well today. I don't have more detail on it than that. So we're watching this closely. And again, but what we'd ask authorities in Russia to do is to take steps, concrete, tangible steps, to reduce tension, not increase it.
So can we trust what Russian officials are saying at this point?
Oftentimes their words are not backed up by actions, and we judge another nation and their intents by their actions. Tony.
I want to take you back a couple years to the case of Matthew Bissonnette, the famous SEAL who wrote No Easy Day. 60 Minutes is going to have him on Sunday saying he's under criminal investigation by the Justice Department. The New York Times did a story today on it. His attorneys told both outlets that he's under criminal investigation. I want to ask you, did the Pentagon ask Justice to launch an inquiry, either Pentagon, NCIS, or the Joint Special Operations Command? This is 2 years running now, and this case hasn't been resolved. So I want to just ask you, did the DOD instigate this criminal inquiry?
I'm not going to speak to the details of an investigation, Tony, but I can tell you there is an investigation ongoing regarding the book No Easy Day and some of the assertions in it. But I won't get into details of it just because it's ongoing. So I really can't. I know unsatisfying as this is for you, I just can't give you more detail than that.
It's unsatisfying, but it's also why 2 years later, you guys still are dogging after him. Can you explain to the public why? What about the book was so off-putting to you?
Again, you're asking me to get into detail on an ongoing investigation. I just simply can't. And I would challenge this assertion that, you guys are dogging him. I mean, there's an active investigation, and we don't investigate things, we or any other agency investigate things lightly. But again, I think we need to let it proceed, and I just won't go into more detail than that.
Specific question. Buried in the New York Times article is an assertion I want you to see if you agree with. They said that the Times said that the film, Zero Dark 30, benefited from extensive assistance from the Pentagon and the CIA. I don't expect you to address the CIA part, but I don't recall extensive assistance from the Pentagon for that movie. Can you push back or at least give some clarification there?
Yeah, actually I can. Anticipating that I might get this question. I have in front of me the report done by the Inspector General, DOD, about this issue, this idea of support to the movie Zero Dark 30. And I'll just read for you the last paragraph. Within the Department of Defense, we did not identify instances whereby any special operations tactics, techniques, and procedures-related information was provided to filmmakers. So, no. There was no active participation by the Department of Defense in that movie to reveal any techniques, or procedures, or classified information to the filmmakers.
Another SEAL Team 6 question. Fox News next month and during sweeps is going to have a two-part series on the man who shot bin Laden.
Is that true, Justin?
No comment.
Okay.
Well, the point being this.
Yeah, you're programming guide here.
Unsatisfying as that may be.
My question is this. You've got now two SEAL Team 6 members who, one we know is on the raid and the second one who may or may not have been, talking about this. You were here when Admiral Mullen and Secretary Gates slapped the hell out of the White House and others for talking too much about it. 3 years later now, are you concerned that SEAL members from the raid are going to start talking, breaking their supposed code of silence?
I think we have a concern generally when any of our members in uniform reveal classified information in the public, in whatever way that is, a book, a memoir, a movie, an op-ed piece. I mean, that's always a concern for us. I mean, you dog us all the time about over-classifying things. Right. Well, but we take operational security very, very seriously. So we're very concerned anytime any member of the Department of Defense takes it upon him or herself to do that, to violate operational security. It's obviously a concern. I'm a public affairs officer. I'm not a special operator. I'm not a SEAL. Wouldn't pretend to be one. But I know that they live by a very high code of silence because of what they do. There's a code of ethics inside the SEALs about not talking about what they do and not seeking recognition for what they do. I think it's a very honorable code, and my friends who are SEALs, I know, live by it and are very proud of it. And I think it's something that all individuals who are participating or have knowledge of sensitive operations should follow.
We'll revisit this in a couple of weeks when they have their special on it.
Well, we'll all be watching, I'm sure, with bated breath. Thanks for the programming guide. That was good.
IG report. We've seen that before, haven't we? Is that a public report?
I don't know. Is that? I have to check. I don't.
The one that says Panetta might have disclosed classified information and then they took it out later?
It was signed out in June of 2013, and it was provided to Congress. So I will check on that. I will check on that. If it hasn't, we'll look into that for you. Yeah.
In response to Ebola, the Chinese Ministry of Defense says it has deployed 50 military health workers to Liberia and is also building a, I think, 100-bed hospital there. I wonder if there's collaboration or coordination between the two militaries over there in Liberia?
I'm not aware of any collaboration or coordination between the two militaries, but we certainly welcome China's contributions to the effort. Another one? Or are you just yawning?
The follow-up, well, as I was yawning too, but the transient personnel that you mentioned, what's the timeline? Like, I mean, is there a specific amount of time that someone's on the ground that would qualify them as being transient versus
Well, at court, you have to let me look here and see. I don't know. Can I take that for the record and get back to you? Otherwise, I'll just be flipping through this manual.
Yeah, unless you, is it in the memo that you're going to give us?
It might be. Literally, the memo just got signed, so I hadn't had a chance to read every graph of it. I can tell you that's the spirit of it for transient personnel. I don't know if it's specified in here in terms of the time limit, but let us take that for you and get back to you. Yeah, Dan?
Based on the chairman's comments yesterday and yours today, should we be expecting arms to start flowing to some Sunni tribes, and what would the U.S. role be in that?
Don't talk about future operations. You know that. Certainly, we have conducted resupply missions in the past. As you know, just a few days ago, we did deliver by airdrop some meals to some Sunni tribesmen. I won't rule anything in and out at this, in or out at this particular point. The larger point to be made, though, is that we expect and we look forward to increased collaboration between Iraqi security forces and Sunni tribesmen.
And the Secretary, just to be clear, shares the view of the chairman that there is a need eventually for an expanded advisory mission in Anbar if this kind of precondition is met with the Sunni tribes. Is that his position?
The Secretary shares the desire that I think the chairman expressed, that we will continue to reassess and evaluate the advise and assist mission, and should it need to expand, and we believe collectively that that's the right thing, that we would do that. Again, though, Dan, we're not there yet. It is a possibility, it's a probability, but we're not there yet.
I mean, the Iraqi army is now reduced, as you know, I think something like 3 bases, basically. I mean, they've been pushed back steadily. So the clock is ticking. This is a fairly urgent decision.
I'm not aware of how many bases they have. You heard the chairman talk about in Anbar they are largely in defensive positions. That is true. That said, you also heard General Austin when he was here say that they continue to push out, and they are pushing out inside Anbar. It's a very mixed, fluid situation. So it's, I think on any given day the situation changes there, and we're going to continue to evaluate it, and if we need to adjust, we'll adjust. Yeah.
2 questions. Does Secretary Hagel believe that asset removal should be a priority in this strategy?
What removal?
The removal of Assad.
Nothing has changed about the policy of this government, a policy that the Secretary supports, that Assad needs to go, that he has lost legitimacy to govern, and he needs to go. And he is a big part of the reason why ISIL has been able to grow.
Yeah, I know. I mean, since he let ISIL or ISIS be in Syria, so does not that make it better? Like if we remove him first and then start ISIL, does Secretary Hagel believe that the removal should be in the strategy?
I'm not going to talk about internal deliberations and discussions about strategy. 2 things. Assad needs to go. The Secretary fully supports that stance because he's lost the legitimacy to govern his people, and he's a big reason why we're countering ISIL in the first place. The strategy that we're executing is a counter-ISIL strategy, and as I said earlier, we believe the strategy is the right one, and we believe it's working. Doesn't mean that in the execution of it, there's going to be readjustments and assessments and changes made in the execution of it, but the strategy is the right one. The Secretary said that himself many, many times.
So you're saying that the strategy could morph into one that goes directly after Assad?
I'm not going to speculate about.
It doesn't right now go after Assad, and you're saying it could change.
The strategy is a counter-ISIL strategy. We constantly evaluate the execution of it, but Justin, the strategy we believe is the right one, and it's working. There's no plans to change the strategy.
Except there was that memo where Hagel apparently said he thinks Assad needs to be part of the strategy.
There's no plans to change the strategy.
To address that, it was very clearly written. He wouldn't talk about it. You don't want to talk about it. Why not? I mean,
there's no plans to change the strategy. Last question, Louis.
Going back to the Secretary's comments yesterday about Assad, he said that he is deriving some benefit from the U.S. military action in Syria. Can you describe what those benefits are? What is happening on the ground that the Assad regime is benefiting from this? And as a side point, there have been reports that there have been significant uptick in Syrian Air Force strikes against opposition targets over the last week, possibly in the hundreds, comparable to what your operations have been there. Is that something that has led to...
I've seen the reports about the alleged uptick in Assad regime strikes against their opposition. I can't verify those numbers. Should come as no surprise to anybody that Assad continues to want to eliminate his opposition. I mean, that's what he's been doing in a quite brutal fashion. And I don't think it should be surprising to anybody that he continues to do that. I think what the Secretary was referring to was, inasmuch as ISIL is a problem for Assad, and we're going after ISIL and reducing their influence and their presence inside Syria, yes, tacitly does that benefit the Assad regime in some way? Of course it does. That is not what we're about, though. That's not what we're trying to do. It's a counter-ISIL strategy. We've had this discussion before. Nothing has changed about our position as a government that Assad needs to go.
There's a dichotomy that's raised by your defense of the airstrikes targeting ISIS, because if the side benefit is that Assad's grip on power is improved while you're launching this, then that goes counter to your idea that he should go.
No, actually, I disagree. Nothing has changed about the position that he needs to go, and he's lost the legitimacy to govern. And this isn't about strengthening his hand. We recognize that he's not going to oppose the strikes we're taking. He hasn't opposed the strikes we're taking, not at all. And we recognize that because we recognize that in a way he sees a tacit benefit to that. Nobody's disputing that, but I think we need to come back to the larger purpose here, which is not to assist the Assad regime. That may be a tangential development. It's about going after ISIL and denying them safe haven and sanctuary inside Syria, and that's what the strikes there are all about.
Also improves his fight against the very militias that you are trying to empower, potentially in the fight against ISIL.
Well, look, I mean, we've been very clear about our willingness and desire and our efforts to build a train and equip program for the moderate opposition. And we've also said that we recognize there's going to be many purposes to that, not just going against ISIL, but also again about working towards a political settlement inside Syria, which means going after the Assad regime. So, I mean, part of the reason we're doing the train and equip is to equip them and train them and give them the military skills so that they can defend their cities, their towns, their people, can go against ISIL, and can also work towards a peaceful political settlement inside Syria. Okay, got to go. Thanks very much.